gonna go and play the song, and you guys can tell me where it's from. All right.
Ah, yes, the Heart of Anxiety from Final Fantasy VII.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh, it's like one of my favorite songs, dude, from that whole game. Like every time I hear it, I'm just like, oh, it's so good.
It immediately
So
takes me back to the train graveyard.
And it's so
Every time.
Yeah.
simple. It's so simple.
just in these 8 bars, you have a number of different methods of creating and releasing tension on a number of levels. The first big one is that the performance plays very loose with the tempo. Particularly, it's like the fourth beat of every measure is held an extra little bit.
Oh, it is, and it's actually, hold on. So there's actually a tempo change that happens
Yeah.
right here. So and it's outside. So not only is it held, but it's like very deliberate. It's like this extra. Man, it just adds so much energy to the piece when they do it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you were to see this in notation, you'd see the fermata held over.
Oh yeah, that
Give
little.
you that little
sure.
extra. The piece breathes and swells with the volume, so it's quiet and then up to a nice volume and then decays, and it swells. That swell by itself without the tempo also creates plenty of energy, but when you put the two of them together, it feels like magic, even though it's only two components of what. If you take away all the stuff that's happening in the top line, this is just two chords breathing.
So you've got the tempo automation. You've got the volume swells. These create this idea that there's breath and life to it. Breathing is itself a bit of an energy tension and release kind of cycle. But then if you take a look at the harmony, you have it's basically a 2-chord kind of pattern. There's a bit of a rise and a bit of a fall to it, but it's with minor chords, at least on this first half. And the second chord is not diatonic. That is, it's not in the same key as the chord. The first chord would lead you to believe, but they are related. So that in itself creates some energy.
What is it? F minor to D minor?
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yep.
Yeah.
100% right. And I don't know if that helps.
It does.
Makes it bigger.
My Kingdom for Fruity Loop style piano roll, where it tells you the names of the notes on the blocks instead of having to look at the keyboard.
Oh, instead of having to look over
Studio
here.
One gives it to you if you zoom in. if you zoom in enough vertically that it widens the space of the keys, then it gives you the note names. I don't know if it does it in Bitwig as well.
No,
Assuming you're in Bitwig.
This is Reason. Close.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Even still,
yeah.
I think one very particular nuance about the volume and the tempo, like as we're looking at it, the held note that drops the tempo down is at the top of the volume. Like it swells up into that note and holds, and then drops you and lets you go. Like that is one of the key subtle nuances that it doesn't seem like a lot until you hear it.
I also really like this second that is played right here. It adds this idea of tension, right? Where it's like Not expected, because like the first time, obviously you're not playing it. You hear it the second time.
Yeah.
Right.
There's melodic tension there.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We've heard this. We hear this F to D movement. We're expecting to hear it again because it's breathing. But that G creates a little bit of a slight a little hitch in the breathing.
Exactly. Well, and it's that idea of like so this is showing kind of the notation tension, like where when you play something that's slightly different, and also it's like a leaded note, right? Because like when you play a second, or like you can do this with sevenths, you can do this with a bunch of different notes. Usually it's not 1, 3, and 5. Typically, it basically adds this idea that it's leading into another section, and it definitely gives this concept of movement.
I love too that it's contrast. Contrary motion, I guess, is not quite the idea, but in the way that I think of contrary motion in a melodic sense, this does it, right? The first two measures introduce a fall. Like, okay, we're going to go down. So then when we repeat it, we don't just go down again. We give a little bit of an up, like, huh, and then it goes down again. And it makes that down hurt. It makes you go like, oh, we were going to go somewhere else. Nope. We got you right here. And then the next chord is not the same chord, but it's going to do the same idea, right? That the difference between measure 4 and measure 5 in that like difference in kind, switching to the major, also gives that energy because it's suddenly not the same idea. It's the same idea, but it's represented in a different way, right? Mm-hmm. And we only changed it by 1 bar. We didn't take a whole section and smash another section to do this. We did this inside the same concept.
I just love how simple it is too. I mean, it's not like if you listen to other Uematsu's songs, like he definitely knows how to layer it on and just go crazy. Like, I mean, there's plenty of songs where he does an amazing job. This one, he kind of flexes by doing something that's incredibly simple. Like it's not fast, like in terms of tempo or in terms of chord changes. Like in fact, you're delaying on each note, and he's playing with that idea, using that simplicity to add just tons of energy and a lot of emotion to the piece.
100%.
Yeah.
Nobuo Uematsu is not a classically trained pianist. He's not a classically trained orchestra person. He started in this business the same way as a lot of us as remixers started out. I really like listening to prog rock or insert genre. I just want to fool around with it and see if I can get ideas that sound like the thing that I'm hearing. Mm-hmm. This is not somebody who is like did a lot of book studying. Like, I'm sure that later in his life he may have gone and done that, but that's not how he started. And you can get to emotion like this just by picking around, by grabbing a couple of notes. If you were to look at the difference of that bar 5 chord and play it against the D, because I think it goes up by a half step. That seems like, what? Why would we do that? That doesn't seem like a thing that I would do, but the tension is in that half step rise to a major chord. Like that E flat major from the D minor.
It actually doesn't go to E flat major there. It goes to C minor, which resolves to C major.
Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm reading. This is another.
I know
that
this.
Some of us do. Yeah, like I'm reading the bass, and the bass is not playing the root note. Right. So that's where it's tricking me because I'm used to looking at the bottom of the chord.
Well, and he's doing that on purpose because this gives even more of an unsettled. Like when you don't use the bass note as the bottom of the chord, mm-hmm. like say you do like an A minor over C, right? Mm-hmm. It gives it gives tension, because it doesn't feel right. And it's great for leading into like some kind of resolution, right? And that's what it does here.
Inversions, right?
Exactly.
And then you've got, besides chord inversions, and bass players rise up, because if you are a bass player and you feel like you don't have any control in your music, don't play the root note the next time you play a chord with the rest of your band. Play a third. You can play a fifth.
Yeah.
Haha, it's a slash chord now. You have control.
Yep,
inverting the chord inherently destabilizes the chord.
Bass players have so much control over the energy and the flow of the song when they're playing. Like when you have a really good bass player, it matters a ton. It changes the whole band. Like I think, I mean, I'm probably gonna get hate mail for this, but I think like the best players that you need to have in your band are probably gonna be your drummer and your bass player. Like that's been my opinion. Because like you can have someone in a guitar that messes up and sounds terrible, but you can get through the song. Whereas if you don't have a good drummer, like I don't know if you can even finish the song. Like if it's a hard song.
I for sure am not sending you any hate mail because I 100% agree with what you just said.
I mean, not that I don't appreciate, obviously, like a good, like the bands I play in right now, the guitarists are absolutely phenomenal. So like, I mean, obviously, like maybe I'm a little biased. I'm like, well, when we have a good drummer, it really matters, right? But I've been in bands where we had bad drummers, and it is not, it's not good. But yeah, the bass. And when the bass and the drummer are like besties, like it works so well because like you get little things like this where it adds and built up energy, and the drummer can play along with it.
Absolutely. I think at some point we'll do where we talk about like mixing techniques. If you're not doing live recordings but you get stems or something like that, one thing that I would like to talk about in a future video is doing something where you get some crossover or blend in your drum tracks and your bass track so that it sounds like your drums and bass were played at the same time. You would be surprised at the amount of professional recordings that when they take, if they're doing a live band, the bass player and the drummer are playing together and locked in. Whether they're on the click, they're locked into each other. And the sound of that on the record is part of the magic. I would love to make that a topic. We don't have to explore that here, but that's where I come from. It's that idea.
Yeah. If I might, so we've talked about a lot of the things that create tension. I want to direct your attention to the resolution of that final chord, giving us the release that we're looking for. Music theory heads, we're looking at doing this, inverted C minor into the C major, but instead of doing the C major, we're variating on the idea one more time. We go to a suspended chord before we resolve to that C major. We do a C sus4. That's one extra last little bit of tension because we're expecting to go back to that C major we just heard. We don't, but only just for a little bit. And now when we do go to the C major, it has much more impact from the tension that sus4 just built. And now we get to release it writing out that C major.
Yeah, I want to point out a little nuance that just happened here in the share screen from Matt. The way that it started originally was the notes of the chord that weren't moving, that were the same between them, were being held throughout the duration, still being carried by the velocity. And you can do that. You can also split them up. You get different effects either way. That's a tool in your arsenal to decide, do I hold these chords? Do I hold these notes across the chord? Do I change them with the chord on the rhythmic accents? That's going to come up to genre. That's going to come up to what else is happening in the mix. Both of them sound good. You just get to make the creative decision about what it is that you want to do.
You got to be careful too, right? Because like there's for these fake strings, it sounds good to break them up. It doesn't sound bad. But when I tried bringing in much more realistic strings and I didn't break it up, you would just basically hear this violinist going nuts on this one string while everybody else is not playing anymore. It doesn't sound good at all. Mm-hmm. So like you have to really understand, like, what you're, and it's probably the same thing with live instruments. I'm sure you have to know what their instruments are capable of doing and what's normal, so you can get the most impact out of that energy. But yeah, like you're absolutely right. By chopping this up, it's very different sounding.
Yeah. That's probably a topic for maybe another workshop, but that big one is I've heard other folks who talk about composition, arrangement, and orchestration. That's having empathy for your parts and your players. And I don't mean like trying to think about how they're going to feel about it. Try to understand the mechanics of the instrument they're playing and what those limitations are, and incorporate those into your writing to the extent that you can. There's nobody has an infinite lung capacity, so you can't expect a brass player to hold one note for 8 bars.
there's a lot of energy too with like how an instrument plays. So like there's certain things, like I was working with Sori, and there's certain things I did with the trumpets because I knew it feels good to hit certain notes. So I was like, I'm gonna make this song fun to play, and because you get a lot more energy out of it when you do that. So the more you can learn about the instrument and know what kind of the sweet spots are of that instrument, you can get a lot out of it.
100%. And if you're curious about an instrument, someone in this community probably plays it. And I don't want to speak for everyone. If someone had a question about guitar or bass because they wanted to understand the idiosyncrasies, the nuances, I'm more than happy to have that conversation because I want you to be able. If a theoretical person talking to me about this, I want you to feel comfortable writing and putting that instrument and making it sound like it was ideated on that instrument. It makes your music sound better and makes me want to listen to your music more. Two positives, right? I feel like if anyone has questions about psytrance, Goa, all the stuff that blows me away about your mixes from GSM, someday I'm going to do an idea of it. I'm coming directly to you, Matt, and asking you questions because I love the way that you do these instruments in a way that I would never approach. And having that understanding makes all of that even more worth it.
Absolutely. And like if there's other people in this community too, and I'd recommend like if someone seems like really passionate or really excited about it, they're probably a great person to ask because they love talking about it and you're gonna get a lot out of it. So obviously that includes us, but there are a few others obviously on the judge panel and also just other mixers that we've worked with that I would love working with again because they're just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So
I'm really curious what this next example coming up on bar 11 is going to be.
You're, I wasn't planning on playing it all the way through, but I will. I will do that. It's actually pretty good. So hold on, I'll go back to the macro view, so it's not just the one notes. So this is where the bell comes in. And I was playing around with audio, so I apologize if it sounds weird because the MIDI didn't sound great, so I just added some instruments. But hold on. It almost sounds like something's not playing. Like there's something that got cut off. You hear that, right? Like the bottom's not playing.
Yeah. It is lacking a little bit of low end reinforcement.
Oh, for sure. Like something's missing. It might just be the MIDI import. Maybe I deleted something when I was messing around with it.
Could
Um,
be. I think that lowest string voice is gone in that section.
yeah, I didn't hear it playing. Or this right here, you think it should be there should be something else down here?
Yeah, I feel
Yeah,
like
there's a voice missing.
Yeah. Let me see if I can just open up a new and import a new one. Hold on. Trying to remember where I put it.
Yeah. Those of you who are, you know, orchestra arrangement minded, you may notice if you'll see something like this later on.
Yeah, it's
Even if it
missing.
happens to be missing from even if it's missing from the MIDI, it is not uncommon to double the cello and contrabass parts uh, separated by an octave. So in the worst case scenario, if you're not sure what to do to add that bottom voice, take your lowest note and double it on the
Yeah.
next octave down.
That's exactly right. That's yep. That's as you said it. That's exactly what I did. I was like, that's typically what I would do too, because like you want to make it feel it warm. Or sometimes what I'll do is I'll be like, okay, it's fine that it's I'll actually add another instrument and have like a warm pad or something like that to fill it. Um, but that's another thing of energy, right? Because like if you have everything just in the treble range, and all of a sudden you actually add something really really low, it really it widens the song and it feels phenomenal.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Just be careful about your intervals in the lower octaves. That creates a level of tension you might not want if it doesn't line up the way you need it to.
Right. We'll probably want to get Hemo on here to talk about the harmonic series and why you don't necessarily cluster or stack chords in the lower frequencies. Because even though I know about it, I don't articulate it as well as he does.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's not great. Um, yep. I'm trying to think if there's anything else we want to go over.
With this track, I think part of what we're seeing in the motion, right, of the bell has more notes happening across those chords. So we're getting that difference with this new melodic idea. It is not playing long held chords. I wouldn't say it's staccato, but because we're getting the more subdivided like 16th notes with a different we're getting a different arc in the melodic content. We're getting difference in kind, and I'm gonna say that a bunch of times probably in this because difference in kind matters so much. It's an idea that plays well with your early idea. Like we're still in the A section, but we have a new piece that's giving energy. It's different from that other thing. What I love about the MIDI is that you could see the way that the arcs swell up and down in the same way the volume is swelling up and down.
Absolutely. And like the other thing is like he adds this thing right here, which I really like. He kind of does it over here too, I think, with spacing, maybe not. Where it's like, it's da, da, da. It's not like da, da, da.
Yeah,
Um,
it's syncopation.
exactly. And it
We're
it adds a
it,
lot because you're not expecting that when like just in the actual melody.
Right.
yeah.
It almost makes it feel that when the phrase comes back in on the next chord, it's starting a 16th note earlier because of the way that slower arpeggio happens.
Mhm.
And that truly is the gift of syncopation. Like, let me take 16 notes, cut off number 15 and restart the pattern. And like hearing what that sounds like, it creates energy, and I think it's something we're going to end up talking about further into this project about time signatures or meter, how that creates energy. Like if you had a rest where that note starts on F instead of it being starting on F, that line plays totally differently. Like if you shunted the whole
Yeah.
MIDI ahead one beat, it would be an absolutely different kind of sound, and it would not carry the same amount of weight.
I think it might just be because of limitations and seeing how you're looking at it. What would actually give the bigger impact is instead of that F at the start of that bar, being held for a space of 3/8 notes, if it was just 2, and then that lower octave F played 1/8 note sooner and got held out for 2/8 notes like the others, it would take up the same amount of time, but it would be less interesting and it wouldn't generate as much energy because we're not creating the tension from anticipating the strong or weak beats of the bar. We've moved to the upbeats just for that one.
You've overlapped the oboe here, right?
Yeah,
The
on
falls.
purpose. Yeah, so you can kind of see that it comes in. This is the
Yeah.
this
Is
is
it
the
oboe or flute?
it's well, I have an oboe over here, but it probably is a flute.
Oh, okay. I'm like, I know it's a woodwind line, and I cannot remember what it is in the original. As long as it's playing in a register that's comfortable for the instrument, it kind of doesn't matter which one. But yeah,
Where the woodwind's at.
So I just added
Woodwind
the
it's a matter of texture.
I just added the strings in the bottom here too, so you can kind of see it. But it's kind of neat how he does this thing, and then he comes like this line that comes down. This kind of resolves it, but not really. And then he basically goes into the actual melody, which is the number of lines you expect it to be. Like this is like a proper grouping, except he holds this a bit. I think. Hold on, so it's
Yeah.
1, 2.
We get a
3,
prelude
4.
callback right here, right? With the spacing and shapes of
Oh, yeah.
these arpeggios.
Yeah. It's that.
Oh, you're right. It's da 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 da. Right, you're right.
Yeah. It's that either major 7 or add 9 kind of action arpeggiated, if you want to be a music theory nerd about it. But yeah, it's at this point a well-established Final Fantasy motif being incorporated into the ARP, if you will.
Oh, that's so cool. I never realized that it was actually it's like the prelude basically right here in the middle
Yeah.
of Anxious Hearts. That makes me like it even more. I didn't think you
Right,
guys
yeah.
could do it, but you did it. Very good.
And one thing that we were just talking about is like using the verticality. right, to help create tension and add energy. You could see it really clear here when you stack all of your voices together in the view, right? We can see the strings covering most of that low, and then how high that bell goes. And why does introducing more lower content or higher content matter? It's not necessarily that they're up high, it's the spread, right? Like if you clustered a chord all together, it might sound, it's super tense, but it doesn't have a ton of energy. But if you would just spread it out across 4 octaves, it has so much different energy, so much different weight. It's more colorful, and it gives you that chance to resonate with it. Part of
Right. It's
ideating
also,
and orchestrating is that.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
It, besides the vertical, this is also creating horizontal contrast, because in terms of arrangement, this is a repeat of the introductory section. But we have more than just strings playing. And the upper 2 string voices, the first and second violins, if you want to stack it up that way, are out on the second pass.
Mm-hmm.
This is so that there's harmonic and melodic space for for this bell music box ARP bit, but then the melody comes back in another texture, which adds some energy. It adds some interest. We're hearing a very similar melodic line from the last time we played through this stuff, but it's coming from a different voice. It's being articulated slightly differently.
Right? In the structure, we did A, and then we did A again, slight with a variation, right? A and A prime.
The other thing I noticed is that they're not, if you look at the, I'm going to get rid of this view, kind of like it, but you don't see any tempo changes again, not for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it would actually make it sound worse had they done that, because now you have things moving. You now have an expectation. You have that beat, and you have enough energy moving forward with the changes that we're talking about here. That you don't really want to do that. I think it would actually make it worse.
It would be very tricky to pull off in a performance. If you were to imagine that this is being performed, I don't necessarily want to say an orchestra, but by an ensemble, right? A group of players are going to perform it. It would be very difficult for all of those performers, not just within the section, but like the oboist and the person playing the bells and the strings, in time to do that breath on that fermata and hit it consistently all the time across. I'm not saying there aren't performing musicians who do, and they're professionals, and they're professionals for a very good reason, because they can do things like that. If you do it too much inside the piece, it starts to lose the meaning of why you're doing it.
Well, there's the other thing too. Now you have an instrument that's effectively acting as an ARP, with the bell running those arpeggios. Since it's filling out the rhythmic information with the subdivision, if you start playing around with tempo automation like that, it's going to be very easy for that voice to feel out of place, because it's giving us a pulse that now doesn't make sense with everything else. But if you have just one section that is just doing long notes, all of a sudden the pulse is much slower, because we don't know the subdivision.
It's the snare drum from earlier.
Exactly. I was about to say that. This is the percussion in this song. So like if you were to do that, it would sound wrong. Like you said, it's like the snare drum in the other song.
Yeah. You would be forgiven for thinking in that moment that the player doesn't know how to play in time. But that will rob energy from your piece, because the motion of that ARP is what's giving us the energy, and it has to be at a consistent point, a consistent pulse for it to happen like that.
And I know that
talking is hard.
I mean, we spent most of this time talking about like tension. Like the release part definitely has its own science to it, but maybe I'm wrong about this, but I feel like the release part is typically a little bit easier than building up tension properly.
I would agree. And the reason I would agree with that is because the release, we are inherently trying to find it. as soon as you introduce tension in a person, the very next thought that that person has is going to be, how do I get rid of this tension? If you sit down, if you're a piano player, I imagine that you can stack 2 chords together. In the first chord, you're going like this. All right, how do I get out of this? This or that, right? You got to introduce that other idea. We're always looking for that other idea, and you could stumble into it and then get it, right? When we come out of this, the brilliant part about the switching to the chords beforehand and maintain just a little bit of the tension, but it's more like the release, right? If we were to look at the chart, that intro of the A, of just the A is the intro, we build with the prime, and we're actually going to release when we go to the B section of this piece, but only a little bit. We're not giving the full giveaway. Like in the arc of the roller coaster and everything, it's okay to have the release come in and drop a tiny bit of the energy. You don't want to full lose it, but dropping a little bit lets you build higher and further. You could plateau it, you could bring it down, you keep the same. Like you make those decisions as you are constructing, right? Like if you want it, why even the fill is there in the build? If the goal is to get much higher, you have to introduce the release in a way that gets you further. Like the snare drum comes in and it's bringing us a whole bunch of energy. We're going, okay, cool. That even feels like a release, even though we haven't let go of the tension. We've just moved it somewhere else, and we're going higher and higher. I don't think that this piece does exactly that arc, and that's okay. Like at one point in these workshops, we'll probably talk about song structure and why we do these things, because this is the key component for doing that.
Well, and there is a point, like I mean, like depends on genre, right? Like there's like, if you look at lo-fi, the goal is to make it so it's very subtle changes in energy, but still feeling like you have that forward motion, because you don't want it to be tense, because that kind of defeats the purpose of having something that's chill, that's lo-fi, right? But you still need some. Like if you have no energy, the song feels dead. Same thing with on psytrance. There's actually a top end. If you make it too much energy, there's actually this, I don't know what to describe it. It kind of feels like almost like it reverberates. Like all of a sudden it feels like it's so much energy that eventually it just feels like it's just too much. Like it feels like, and I'm not talking about having so many changes that there's no change, because I think we talked about that before, where it's like if everything's changing, nothing's changing, right? That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm saying like if you just keep building energy, just keep going and going and going, eventually like the listener's like, all right, I'm done. And there's like, all right, like this is too much. It almost feels comical, right?
We went nowhere because we couldn't decide where we're going.
Right. It's like, yeah, and like you hear that a lot. Like I've heard that from a lot of people. It's like, so where's the song going? Like you're doing a lot of changes, but where is it going? Like it just feels like you're just constantly changing. Like what's going on?
Right. Where do I get off of the ride? Like right. I'm on it. I want to. I'm done now. When can I go? Like, why do we have genre conventions of the drop, of the hold, of the blast beats? Like in specific genres, why do we do these specific moves? Because the audience is looking for them, right? If your audience is not musicians, they don't care about how much effort you put into this 5/4 and it does this crazy subdivision. They don't want that. They're waiting for the thing that they know, which is that release.
Right. Right, exactly. I mean, and it's the same thing with the fills too. Like if you put the wrong fill in, like I'm sure you guys have seen that, where it's like ordered like the metal drummer in a, I don't know, like in a folk band or something like that, and you hear it and you're just like, this is hilarious.
Right. Why are there falling rocks when I'm just listening to like 2 acoustic guitars? What's going on here?
Right.
You've got the jazz quintet going. They, about to go into the trumpet solo, and totally not following everything. The drummer just pulls out one of those rock and roll tom fills, and it's like, where did that come from, and why is it here?
Right.
The only release is, I'm glad it happened and now it's gone.
Exactly. So it's like, I mean, so when we say like you want to do something that's unexpected, we're not saying that. Like there's still conventions in each genre that you need to make sure that you're following. It's some you can stretch a little bit more and be creative, But something like that, I mean, it just sounds like you're a new drummer, right? It sounds like, oh yeah, this drummer just doesn't know the genre.
Right.
Yeah.
Ideally, you know it and you're breaking it on purpose so that it's a subversion of expectation. You
Right.
don't want it to feel like you don't know what you're doing. You want it to feel like you know exactly what you're doing.
Yeah. You can pretty much every rule or guideline in music can be broken in some fashion. You just have to make it make sense. Is the big thing. Where are you going with it, and how are you accomplishing it? Is the big thing we're getting at, without giving specific examples.
Right. I mean, like there's on the extreme side, like I used to do a lot of modern stuff where there's like it's like no time, right? Like you have that big zero
Mhm.
where the time signature is and everybody loves it. Like they hate it. I'm just gonna be honest, they hate that. But it's fun though, because like even then you're basically dealing with sounds, whether it's like a sound of steam or a sound of like glass breaking or something like that. Um, you can still break like build tension and you can still release it using just sounds. And you can be very creative with that. So there's a lot of room, um, for creativity here. You just have to make sure, like there are a few standards that again you don't want to go too far on, otherwise people just don't have that grounding they need.
This chart, while I'm thinking about it, illustrates a very perfect point that I think is good to make. Sometimes the conversation comes up. I don't think it's in every community, but in OC Remix in particular, about why we don't really like fade out endings, or if you put a fade out ending on the panel, the judges pan it. Why is that 9 times out of 10 the thing that happens? Because there's no release and a fade out.
Right.
The whole point of the fade out is to say, and the idea continues going and going and going. And if you were watching this performance live, this would be all of the musicians. They're going to trade a lead. They're going to do something interesting. There's improv. There's something going on. And on the recording, oh, they ran out of tape. You just have to imagine what's going on. That's the whole point of that. That is not interesting in a here's my finished piece and I'm going to let you go now.
Right. Like something like I actually like is when people do, hold on. It's maybe I should create like a new version of this one here. Like I'll do this every once in a while where it just ends like this, which is really, let me set this to back. Where it's like it's still building up and then it just stops. And like you hear that and it's actually kind of fun because it's like, oh, like it basically ends like even without like because like with the drummer sometimes you'll end it with like a hit or like a crash or something just to say done.
Mm-hmm.
And when they don't do that, it adds this extra sense of tension. And it's like the listener's like, ah, what? No. It's actually a lot of fun to do this.
It is.
I wouldn't do this a lot.
It does piss people off.
It does.
It does make them mad because you didn't give them the thing they explicitly came here for.
Yep. It's kind of like going like da da da, and then they expect that dot at the very end and you just don't give it to them. It's
Right.
just so funny.
If you do that, be kind and do it on the next one.
Yes.
Matt, this was awesome. Josh, this was awesome.
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you guys.
We'll catch you next time.
Thanks, y'all. See you next time.